in a matter of seconds. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Mortgage Coach Tuesday interview. I have been doing this interview every year for, I think it's like 15 years. And one of the ideas that Jeremy helped me come up with in Vegas a couple of weeks ago is like, hey, why don't I have someone like Jeremy, a baller in the mortgage coach community? He's a grandmaster. He's done over 1,000 TCAs. Why not at least once a month have Jeremy and some of the rock stars we have do interviews? So what's up, Jeremy?
What's happening, Davey Do?
Dude, I'm really pumped. After thinking about it, I this is one of the favorite things I do. So it's not like I need the day off or I don't want to do the Tuesday interview, but I do think it will add another layer of value to the community when it's someone like you who's been interviewed, that loves this channel, but you're picking your guests for all the reasons you pick a guest, and then it's just you interviewing them. So I think this is going to become a really valuable part of the mortgage coach community. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too, man. I know a ton of really great people that have helped me and that I've learned from, so it's pretty easy to tap into, and super pumped today on my homie Brian that we have on.
Well, I'm going to have you share why you brought him on in a minute. I do want to mention, everyone, the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel is killing it this year. So like we're halfway through the year, and I looked at the analytics, and the video views are up 46% this year. Guys, we've always had this very valuable channel, but it's like that's almost 50% increase. We've had 2,800 new subscribers to the YouTube channel this year, trying to get to 20,000, everyone. So I need another 2,000. If you get value from this channel and you know someone that's in mortgage that you think would get value from it, and they're like our type of people, please refer them. And then this is kind of interesting. This is the first year where there were more mobile views in the channel than computer views. So mobile is now the #1 way that people are consuming content on the Mortgage Coach YouTube channel. And then this was interesting. TV views, and I'm assuming it's Apple TV, is up 50%, and tablet views is flat. That's kind of interesting, huh, Jeremy?
Yeah, man. Yeah, tablet flat, that makes sense. I have had an iPad for 10 years, and I think I've used it once in the last 4, which is weird. Yeah, just to think about that out loud. But yeah, and it doesn't surprise me that TV views are up, by the way. I mean, if you're a manager on this call, or if you have a small team, any junior loan officers, anything, or if you're just in a branch and you're an LO and you have other loan officers you work with, there's not a better way than to throw it on Apple TV in your conference room and watch a training together. So that doesn't surprise me at all that it's up so big, because what a great way to leverage that type of information.
So that's footnote. It's going to be my only takeaway for today's call is if you're a manager, make sure you're doing weekly sales training meetings, making sure you're leveraging that Apple TV, and whether it's a mortgage coach video, some other coach, Ed Milet, whatever, just some inspirational content to help you as a teaching tool. Get after it. That's a new winner's way to do things. So Jeremy, I'm going to leave in a minute, but I want to hear you introduce Brian. And I also want to just know why, like I said, Jeremy, pick anyone you want to interview, and you pick Brian. So I just want to stay here and hear the introduction and the why Brian.
Awesome, man. So we have a super special person on the call today. So Brian Sciutto he just has no fear. And we're going to talk, I have some questions I wrote out here that I'm going to walk him through. No prep, by the way, because you guys know that's how I like to do it. I don't want to tell him what we're going to talk about. I want him to be super authentic, because he is anyway. But the guy doesn't really have a fear button. He has a ton of faith. And I want you to hear his origin story. And I think that talking about fear and going back to his origin story, first getting in the business, because I've known Brian since he first got in the business. That's why I chose him. He quasi worked for me when I didn't know what the heck I was doing when I was first building a region thing. I want you guys all to hear the story, like how we met. We developed a relationship. I have seen him grow to unbelievable heights. I mean, I'm talking 200+ million personal production per year, $1 billion branch. Like, he is an absolute stud. And then I thought I was good at something called CCRs, which is current client referrals. I've talked about it before on here, etc. And then I watched this guy do a seminar, a presentation at one of our coaching seminar events, and he got like 70 in a month, in 1 month. he got 70. And I was like, on here talking about how great I am about it getting 17. This guy got 70. So it really made me up my game. But I've known Brian for a really long time. I've seen him go from one loan a month or every other month to 50, 60, 70 loans a month. I mean, it's just unbelievable. He couldn't be a nicer human being. He's going to share of whatever I ask him, he's going to share. He'll make anything available to you. And I just couldn't be more pumped to have him on and to see his journey. It's like how big he's gotten and how humble he is. So yeah, that's why I picked Brian.
Take care, y'all. Have a great interview, and community, ask questions down below, engage, have a good time. I'll go watch this on Facebook now.
Awesome.
Take care, Jeremy.
Awesome. So everyone, if you guys have questions, whatnot, of course, always just type them in the chat, etc. I'll monitor it and get to them as we go through this. Ask Brian, ask myself, whatever you'd like. So first of all, Mr. Brian, how you doing today, bud?
Yo, what's up, homie? I'm
Just
doing really well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. It's great to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. This is what I love about busy people, by the way, you guys. Busy people always find time for the important things, and they always also find time to give. Like Brian, he basically, I was like, hey, can we do this? He was like, just let me know when. I'll move around anything that I already have in my schedule. So this is a super passionate servant leader. He's just an incredible, incredible friend. So tell me, man, how you doing right now in the market? How are things going for you?
Bro, it's fun. Like right now, it's really, really fun. Lots of opportunity out there. Before I even say any more, I just got to say thank you to you and Dave. I mean, to hear the introduction from Dave and then to hear why you chose me, brother. Like, I got to tell you, it's like surreal right now. So 10 years ago today is when I met you.
Yep.
And shortly thereafter, it was the first time I ever did a mortgage coach TCA at like 2:15 in the morning. I'm like, you know what, let's figure this thing out. So it's surreal to be here, man. I don't know how I'm here, but thank you so much for having me. Thanks again for the kind words, man.
Well, I know how you're here. Humble, hungry, $1 billion brand, 200 million personal production. You find time for your family. You got it all. So I would love if you would share with everyone just kind of how did you get into the business? Like, how did you get into business? And I have some questions that I'll follow up from there, but I would love everyone to know, because right now, Brian, I feel like we're in a time in the market where there is a lot of fear. And whether you've been in the business for 20 years, 10 years, 2 years, a lot of people feel the same way right now.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't matter like what the experience has been. I talk to a lot of loan officers. I have a lot of loan officers as well that work with me. And it's interesting to see, like, it feels like everyone's in the business for their first time again. Statistically speaking, like percentage wise, right? So I would love to know, tell us about your origin story. So how did you get in the business and why?
Yeah, a really good question. I don't think I hardly ever talk about this, but I got in the business. I used to be in the residential infill development business. So there was a stretch there from 2004 to 2010-ish that I was working with some Australian developers and Australian architects that were doing some amazing things overseas, and then they wanted to bring their product here. And so I met them at a health club that I owned, and they're like, dude, you want to get out of this and do something way more fun? And I'm like, yeah, let's it's way more fun. Let's do it. And way does it make way more money? And they're like, yeah. So got my real estate license, got in the residential infill development business. I ran the sales portion of everything they built across the United States. And then we picked lenders to be our preferred lenders at the time. Like, if you were a lender, you could pay a developer a ton of money. You get a logo in the newspaper, and you get like your little ad next to their ad back in the newspaper days. And I'll never forget, the market was getting a little bit tough. And I went to one of our preferred lenders. His name was Ted. I'll just leave it at that. And I said, Ted, look, in order for deposits to stay sticky, in order for us to actually build the remaining units, like, we have to have sticky deposit. People have to qualify. And he looked at me, he goes, Brian, don't worry about it. Everybody qualifies. Like, I can get anybody qualified. Don't worry about it. And at that moment, I knew I was kind of screwed. And then shortly thereafter, the world started falling apart. And I quickly realized that all the lenders that I personally knew, I'm not picking on all the lenders, but all the lenders that I personally knew, they worked like 5 hours a week. They made like $1 million a year, and they were on the golf course like 35 hours a week or on vacation or whatever. So they weren't advisory, they weren't holistic, they weren't hustling. They were literally just closing some deals and screwing people on the back end. And I didn't understand that until I got in the business. But I took a year off after my world imploded. I just kind of, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And then I realized, like, gosh, these guys were killing it, but they weren't working. They didn't know what they were doing. They weren't advisory. I was like, man, I think I could get into that market and actually make a living and do it the right way. And so that was my impetus in getting in the build. That was my motivation. So that's why I got in the mortgage business. And then here's why I knew I was a good salesman. Like, I knew I could sell because I had zero experience, had no idea what I was doing, obviously. And I decided I wanted to do this. And so I called the owner of Opus Advisors, Susan McCann, with my former business partner, and they did financial advisory and they did mortgage at the same time. And I was like, oh, I want to do that. So we called her and we convinced her to take a meeting with us, had zero experience. And so she took our meeting, flew up to the Bay Area, and she ended up giving this knucklehead a mortgage branch. And then that was the beginning of a year and a half journey of just misery. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. I'm sure I let Susan down. I'm sure she looks back at that, at me today going, man, I wish I would have never hired that guy. But that was the beginning.
No, first of all, I'm going to correct you for a second. I guarantee you she doesn't look back and say, I wish I didn't hire that person. I bet she looks back and she was like, I was just too early.
Yeah.
So that's important for all of us to know sometimes. Like, we all like trip up, we all make mistakes. I mean, gosh, I've imploded twice in my career, lost everything, etc. And the reality is sometimes we're just ahead of our time. and so I'm sure that she's actually smiling and saying like, wow, I knew that could happen with that guy. So let's talk about those struggles though in the first year, because once again, we have a lot of people on this call, they've been in business a long time. A lot of people on the call, they might be like 3 years in or 2 years in, and all they know is rates were 2-3%, right? So you had different struggles when you got in. So by the way, when you were describing like these people that didn't know what they were doing and making a bunch of money, like I was 50% that, right? Like now the one thing I worked hard always, right? So I always worked hard, but I totally didn't know what I was doing for the first 3 years in the business, had no clue, was a moron. And I just knew that if you had a 680 credit score, you qualified. That was basically like my deal. Now, I did experience what you talked about though. Someone said, hey, I think you should meet with this guy. He's really killing it. They flew me down to San Diego. I met with this guy. And of course, it was everything he said. 7 Series BMW. I meet at lunch, suited up. What are you doing today? Going to get drinks after lunch. Oh, like how are you making all this money? And it was all 228 arms, right? With like 2 on the front, 2 on the back. And my mind was blown. I was like, why would you do that? Right? To anyone. So I went through that as well. Thank goodness that I got out of it quickly. That mindset or, those bad habits or just not knowing anything. But I would love to go back to that first year in the business. So what you didn't have fear, right? Because you used to just get after it. So when you first got in the business, what are some things that you did to generate contacts? Because I hear this all the time, Brian. I just can't get anyone to meet with me. I just can't get anyone on the phone. And then usually when I peel it back, they're just not, their effort's pretty low. But I would love to know, I know your effort is never low. And by the way, full disclosure, when I first met Brian, I was like, there's no way that this guy, I was the opposite of the person that hired him. Like I was like, I'll take a chance just because, but he just seemed like the most mellow surfer Spicoli dude when I first met him. Like I was just like, this guy's gonna kill it in mortgage. So it just goes to show you, don't ever judge a book by its cover. He obviously was like a Greek god. I was probably insecure because I was a trainer at one time as well. But share with everyone, like, what was that first year, 2 years, like what were some of those struggles and what are some of the things you did to get into action?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll say the result of those first 2 years was when I had the opportunity to meet you, which basically set me off in this whole new journey, which was amazing, which I was more directed. But I would say the first 2 years I was super ambitious, right? I knew success was possible. I just didn't know like how to do it in this business. And so I just went back to sales and I realized that in this business, the most successful real estate agents I knew, and at the time, the most lenders that I knew, they had the most relationships. And so the first things that I did is I literally wrote down, like, I have to get way more relationships. And so I just figured out ways of just getting in front of people. And this was part of the struggle because I was getting in front of everybody, whether it was a top producer, a realtor that would never make it ever, financial advisors that were a multi-level marketing scheme, I would just get in everybody, anything. So I was visiting as many networking events as I could. I created my own networking company, I guess I'd call it. I called it the Coastal Networking Group. And at one time I built it up to 15,000 people. And so we'd have like events with 500-600 people at a time. I would literally get lists of realtors and just call them, or I'd find out where they would be, or I'd go to an event and I followed up with them. I would just do whatever it took. Facebook was new at the time. And so I was private messaging tons of real estate agents that I could find on Facebook. And that really worked well at the time because there weren't a lot of people on Facebook at the time. So it was just that. And it was just trying to meet with as many people as I could. For me, luckily, I met with a ton of people, so tons of volume. And so my sales ratio was probably, my success was probably really low in terms of closing, but it was the sheer volume, getting in front of as many people as I could and selling as much as I could. And that was the early days.
So interesting. So let's unpackage that a little bit. And I want everyone to take this away, right? Like I wrote down a few things already. Like he knew, so this is where his faith comes in my opinion, like in the lack of fear, which is the definition of faith in a lot of ways, is that he knew success was possible. He just didn't know how, but he didn't care. So he knew success was possible. He just didn't know how, but he didn't care. So then the second thing he noticed is that all the successful people that he was watching, so I want you guys to write this down, observe your surroundings, because what he did was he watched all the successful people he was observing, taking in the information, getting a lay of the land, and he realized something really, really, really quick. Notice that he didn't realize that, oh, they're buying a bunch of leads. Oh, they're at a call center in front of a phone the whole time. He realized that they had the most relationships, period. And that has never changed, and it will never change. I promise you, no matter what anyone tells you that, hey, the internet's going to take over. They've been saying that since 2006, just so you know. When I first got in the business, it was, you have a 4-year shelf life. I've been told that my whole career, and it's been 18 years. Okay, so it's not true. Relationships always win. And the easiest and the only way to get into relationships is contact, right? Contact is the only way to get into relationship with people. So you were basically just cold calling. Were you asking for introductions to people?
I was cold calling. I was asking for introductions. I was asking people what events they go to where I could, hang out with people just like them, like what they like to do. Man, I was just all over the place. I did not protect my time. Let's just be really clear. One of the lessons I learned really like early on was I said yes to everything, not just directed things like this, like everything. And I would take a meeting with anyone. I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made actually helped me learn a big lesson is that I would meet with anybody, but what I would do at each of those meetings would ask them who else they knew or where they would be or where the successful people that they knew, where they hung out. And so I was just asking a lot of questions, and I would literally get done with my day every day at 2 a.m., 1 a.m. My work day, obviously was not married, did not have kids. I was single, so I could do those things at that time. I wasn't the smartest in the world, but I would literally sleep on my office floor 2 to 3 nights a week, get up, go to the gym in the morning, get a quick workout, shower, and come right back. But it was just about acquiring relationships, like getting in front of people, building a brand. I mean, that was really my focus at that time.
And now when you look back at that though, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I think sometimes a lot of people, they see me interview someone or they see me interviewed or whatever, and they go, gosh, man, how do they get it all done in such a little amount of time? I want everyone to hear this. There are seasons in your career, okay?
Yes.
There are seasons where you will work a ton. There are seasons where you will figure out that that's not a good use of my time. There are seasons where you'll be balanced, for lack of a better term. And then there'll be another season where you're like, I got to work a lot again right now. I'm going through that season right now. I'm working a little bit more. I'm adding 10 hours a week. to what my work week was, because I don't want to stop having the success. I want to keep going, but I know it's a season. So I appreciate you sharing that, because sometimes we get up here and everyone's like, of course they can do it, right? No, not at all. He went through meeting with anyone. I also want you guys to all write this down that are listening. He met with anyone and didn't qualify them. I think that that's underrated personally. I think that sometimes we get a little too focused on, is it qualified? Like, did they do 10 deals? Did they do 50 deals? Did they do, like, are they a big financial planner? Oftentimes, meeting with someone in general, it's just an hour of your time. Even if it is a non-producer, a small producer, that person can still have influence. Everyone has influence. So we need to remember that. I think that massive amount of contact, which is what he's talking about, is critical right now. Massive amount of contact, massive amount of in-person, massive amount of cold calls, massive amount of asking for introductions to people, massive amount of, who do you know that is successful? I would love to meet them. I would love to interview them. These are things that you can say to your sphere of influence. And I would challenge you all, write down the name of 5 people that you know that are successful, or that you think are successful and you would like to meet them, and call them today. Reach out to them. I think you'd be shocked as to how much time successful people will actually give. It's shocking to me. I mean, one of my best mentors of all time, a guy named Tim Sanders, right? He's an author. You guys should all check him out. Keynote speaker. He's absolutely brilliant. I cold called him after seeing him do a keynote, right? I literally hunted him down, followed up a handful of times. All of a sudden, I had an appointment with him, right? And he was super generous with his time, and he gave me all kinds of stuff. We ended up working together for about a year on some consulting stuff. And but I had to make that action. So action is going to trump and get us all out of our heads and get us into productivity and make those connections so that we can build the R word relationships. So you were basically just hunting and pecking, man. You were creating lists of realtors. You were going to every networking event you could possibly go to. What was one or two times, just think about it for a second, of where you felt deflated, like in doing that? Because I'm sure it wasn't all just rainbows and unicorns for you while you were going through that.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, it was probably a lot. It was probably deflated a lot. It was, shoot, probably every other day, 3 times a week, right? Because I wouldn't get the yes at the meeting, or I'd get the yes, and then I wouldn't get the result, meaning I would not get the leads after they told me, and they would never pick up the phone again. And then I would just, compare. I mean, it's human nature. Like, I would look at my peers and they were just killing it, right? And I was just like, gosh, they barely work, but they're doing all this business. And so, yeah, man, there was a lot of times where it was deflating. It wasn't defeating, but it was definitely deflating.
Yeah, yeah. So, but how do you? I want to dive into this just a little bit more for a couple minutes. Like, how do you not let that become defeating? Because it's like we all have doubt on some level, and some of us are better than others at dealing with our self-doubt. But how did you stay so mentally strong during that really hard time? Because I think it's very timely for people right now. Hey, here's the reality. A lot of realtors aren't calling back. A lot of leads are not engaged right now. They're like, I'm good. Prices are so high still, and payments are 30% higher. And so oftentimes I think that we can personalize that, right? And be like, ugh, this sucks. What am I doing? Why am I in this business? Like, how did you stay so mentally tough, for lack of a better term, and find that grit to keep going?
Such a good question. I mean, nobody's ever really asked me that before, but it's such a really good question. So the more I think about it, I think the common denominator for me was I was reading sales books. And if you really get down to, I don't know, the common denominator of almost every sales book, it's sales is a byproduct of getting just as many no's as you can before you
Mhm.
get the yes. And so, when I realized it was just a percentage game, and so my percentage wasn't great, all that meant was I just needed to have more connections. So the more connections, the more opportunities. My batting average was really low. And I just realized, like, I just had to learn to get better at my batting average. I had to learn to close a little bit better. I had to learn to add a little bit more value. I had to learn how to ask better questions. It was just a learning process. So I equate it to maybe like a baseball player, that it's not that they can't hit a baseball, it's just they don't have enough at bats or enough swings yet. And so that was really the way I guess that I looked at it. If I look back, it was just accumulation of all these different sales books. And the common denominator again was just sales is a byproduct of closing percentage. Closing percentage is going to be low in sales. So I had to, just continue to get as many meetings and introductions as I could. And I think the percentages based on the books I was reading would take care of themselves.
I love that. So everyone, huge takeaway there. Okay. Huge takeaway. So what I want everyone to take away from that is that when developing relationships, your percentage of success is going to be very low at the beginning, right? Your percentage of success is always going to be very low at the beginning. This goes for me and Brian as well right now. Even when you're building new relationships, it's the new. Your closing percentage is going to be low on the new. And if you know that in advance, there's really not anything to be afraid of because it's known. Fear usually equals the unknown. Do you agree, Brian?
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
the unknown creates worry, the unknown creates doubt, the unknown creates anxiety. So if we just make the unknown known, in this example, new relationships, we all know we need a lot more. We probably need double the amount that we have right now if we want to keep moving in this volume, units closed, helping families, etc. We need a lot more relationships. So if we know that it's going to be, pretty low percentage of close initially on the new relationships, then it shouldn't be scary. So massive amount of contact, I love it. Turning point for you. So how did we meet? What was our first interaction like?
Yeah, good question. So our first interaction was at a dinner in Petaluma, California. Yep. I was getting recruited by a couple of recruiters, Jay and Paul from First Cal. Yep. And they said, hey, dude, and by the way, Opus Advisors, they had about enough of me, right? Like
they had enough of you bumbling, stumbling, mumbling through.
Yeah, and I could tell my time was, it was just a matter of time before she let me go. So I was looking for new opportunities, and these recruiters called me, invited me up. I was suited and booted, meeting with, Dan Rawich and, the owners of First Cal, and then you walked in and shorts and maybe had 3 holes in your t-shirt. It looks like you just pulled it out of the laundry pile, walked in, and everybody at that time was bowing down to Jeremy, and I didn't know who he was at the time because I was so new in the industry. But he was the top producer at First Cal, and you sat right next to me, and you proceeded to like grill me for about a half an hour, just asking me a bunch of questions about who I was, where I came from, just like this. He was one thing that Jeremy is good at, and I want to impress upon everybody, is just asking a lot of questions. He just asks questions and he finds a way to connect. So a great book for me, just based on this conversation. Jeremy and I was just talking to Patrick Galvin on Saturday, the author of The Connector's Way and The Trusted Way. I would read those 2 books. Great books to read when you're really trying to cultivate and impress upon relationships, to add value and show gratitude and basically to get them to talk to you again.
Love it. So Connector's Way, The Trusted Way. So we meet, you end up, coming aboard. What was like a next turning point for you as you were going through that process and you started doing loans? I mean, you started doing, a good job, but what was that like? Going to a new company, and then like what was a next big turning point for you in your career?
Yeah,
I think I know the answer, but I don't.
Yes, you do. I think you do. I think you do. So I will tell you guys that your company isn't your problem. Yep. Your company's not your problem. So it wasn't the company that was my problem. It was being directed. I was just drifting. And so early on in my career, I drifted. I mean, I literally traveled 99 paths. And then thank God I ran into Jeremy, because I asked him if I could come by his office the next day. And he was gracious. And he said, absolutely, I'll take some time, come by. And I showed up and he was on the phone, like what we should all be doing. He was literally in the middle of phone calls when I walked into his office. And when he got off that phone call, I put the rest of his calls on pause for a little bit so he could talk to me. And he literally had 2 things on his desk. He had a folder. It was a blue folder. I didn't know what it was at the time. And he had a white sheet of paper. It was a legal size sheet of paper. It had a bunch of boxes on it. And then I just basically started asking him, like, how, what he did to do 8 to 10 loans. So he was literally doing 8 to 10 loans a month, and that was like godly at the time. And I thought that was,
I thought I was kind of a big deal back then. It was really, it's embarrassing, not because of the units, but because of my attitude and my ego back then. But you're right. Yes, you're
yeah, but
100%
it
right.
was a lot of, deals at the time for what I knew. Anyway, so he basically said I was doing a greatness tracker. I just became a student at this company called the Core, and so I do these things every day. Here's a CD. Here's a blank greatness tracker. He literally gave it to me, and he said, "Dude, just listen to the CD. I'm not going to tell you more than that. Your goal is to fill this thing up every single week. In fact, if you want to do more." Like if you want to do more business than what's normal, like do more than just one greatness tracker. Try to do more than one. And so and then that's the last thing he told me before I left. Is he said they have these things called the Core Summits. And so one of the things that changed my life was getting to one of these Core Summits. So that became like a big time goal for me. And it was to get into one of these summits. And I had intention for the first time. For the first time, somebody actually gave me a little direction and said, dude, just do this. Quit doing the 98 other things. Just do this. And so I was directed. I left your office and I started doing that. I listened to the greatness tracker. I basically said, have 15 face-to-faces every week. It said, have 5 break breads every week. It said, have 60 great calls every single week. Have X amount of 10 thank you cards every week. And so I just listened to it. And then I just learned how to make a great call a great call. I learned how to make a face-to-face beneficial and worth it. I learned how to make a break bread worth it. So I just learned how to start qualifying everything in my day and start to slowly have direction on how to close somebody, slowly have direction on how to ask for a meeting, slowly have direction on how to conduct a meeting for business. And so that was the first turning point in my career, is just having some direction. So dude, I'm forever grateful for you for that.
Well, dude, it's my pleasure, and you have like eclipsed me, so it's fantastic to watch.
No.
But I want to unpackage this a little bit, okay? So I want everyone to take away what he just said. He said a word 3 times, and I'm going to talk about what's called micro and macro. So macro, he used a word 3 times. He said slowly learned how to develop the relationship, slowly learned how to have a productive meeting, slowly learned how to figure out what was worth my time and what's qualified as time for me spent, etc. He used the word slowly 3 times. Okay, that's macro. Macro equals success. Now, what we don't talk about though is the micro. There's micro and macro. So macro is the long term, okay, over time. Call that 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. Okay, 6 months, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. That's the macro. Now, in order though to be successful, because we're all walking contradictions, I'm warning you, spoiler, I'm going to contradict myself right now. Okay, in the micro, the day to day, the minute to minute, the hour to hour, the breath to breath, you have to be psycho. Okay, so the macro happens because the micro is you don't waste time. You're on the phone in between every appointment. You're making as many contacts as you can. You're doing 15 face-to-face appointments every single week. You're sending a mortgage coach total cost analysis to every single lead, to every single pre-approval, to people that are unresponsive, to people that are responsive. You are on it all the time during the hours that you've decided to work. That's the micro. No one ever focuses on the micro. Everyone just focuses on the manifestation, the macro. Like, I'm going to be $100 million producer. I have so many people that tell me that all the time, that work with me and don't work with me. And I'm not singling anyone out. If any of you guys are watching this, you're like, were you talking about me? Maybe. Okay. So, but I have that word all the time thrown at me. I'm going to be this. I'm going to be that. I'm always like, awesome. Show me the micro though. Okay. Show me the grit. Show me what your day looks like. Show me how many mortgage coach total cost analysis with videos that you sent out in the last week. Show me the work, because the work is what is actually going to get you there. And I think we can't forget that. So slowly, he said, you have to be patient with the macro, but you have to be really impatient with the micro. And that's the hardest part, because it's you managing yourself at the end of the day, right? But what you did, which was really, really smart, and I wish I would have done it years before, right? Because I was only in the core coaching program. And by the way, any coaching program that works for you will work if you do it. I love the core. Brian's in the core. We're both coaches in it. It's phenomenal. But any coaching program will work. Find a coach that will help you and that will work with you, because that's how you were held accountable to the micro. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So he got into this summit, and this is one of my favorite stories of all time, by the way. So these summits, you have to qualify to be in it, meaning you have to make a certain amount of money. And I think at the time it was 125,000. Is that right, Brian?
It was actually 250 at the time.
Okay. So it was 250. And this is what I love. This is why I love this story and why I love Brian so much, is that he will make it happen no matter what. You've already got some insight to him beginning in his career, didn't know anyone. He built a networking group of 15,000 people. He didn't know what the heck he was doing. He was just connecting. He won't take no for an answer. So you got into one of these, right? You got into one of these summits, these events where they have to qualify for you, but you didn't really qualify, did you?
Not even close. So it was 250. And I think Jeremy gave my name. Somebody gave my name to the
Of course I
forum.
did. Yeah, I gave your name.
He gave
yeah.
me name. So the recruiter called me and he said, I didn't hear it this way, but here's what I heard. He asked me if I wanted to make $300,000 a year. And I couldn't answer him fast enough. It was like basically, hell yes, I want to make $300,000 a year. So I said, hell yeah. And so, but he really asked was, do you make 300 a year? So that's the way I got into the core. And so I showed up to this thing and I was making less than $50,000 a year. And I was miserable. I was sleeping like 4 hours a night, maybe. That was a good night, 3 hours a night, and working my tail off. And I went to the core. All these guys like you kind of had their stuff together. We all know we're insane, but kind of had that appeared to have their stuff together. And here I am, like in the middle of the night, I was working, taking phone calls in the middle of the event. I definitely did not belong, but it gave me a sense of like how to focus my business, like how to start structuring the building blocks of the business. So I took away from that just a little bit of support. So I just needed some support so I could go score touchdowns and somebody could fulfill things. And then I started learning how to close. I started learning how to add value. I started learning what real estate agents wanted and needed so that I could find that need and fill that need. But that was kind of the early on, the beginning of my core journey.
I love it. So a couple things just to once again unpackage highlights for me. I love doing that because I learned so much by doing this stuff with you and with other people as well. Is notice what his mindset was. He heard something different than what was said to him. And I think that that's important on multiple levels. I'll unpackage a couple of them. Number one is that you have to have that mindset of the success mindset. Like, I'm going to make it, I can do it. And that's why he heard it the way he did, right? You have to have that mindset. So pour as much good stuff into your brain every single day that you possibly can. Read great books. Someone asked what was the name of those two books. It was The Connector's Way and The Trusted Way. Okay, The Connector's Way and The Trusted Way. So pour as much good stuff. You don't have to read the whole book in a week. I'm not like I'm a reader, like I read all the time, but I'm not a good reader. Okay, like it takes me a while. I'm ADD sometimes, I'm all those things, but I read 10 pages minimum every single day. Okay, so make it easy on yourself. Read 10 pages. Get that mindset that you're going to succeed. He heard what he wanted to hear, okay, because he was in that mind frame, that growth mindset. He knew what he wanted to do. So you can do that too. You just have to brainwash yourself. Just think of a little cult. Okay, you're going to create a little cult inside your brain and you're going to be successful. You're going to be awesome. I do affirmations every day. They're sitting on the back of my wall. Be weird. Okay, get a little weird with yourself. It really, really works. So that's one. Now on the flip side, and I think this is important in this market, is that what we're talking about is framing, right? The framing of a message. And we need to know that if someone doesn't create the frame for us, the consumer, the realtor, the client we're working with, they're going to create it for themselves. Okay, they're going to create it for themselves. Like Brian created his own frame with what he heard, because obviously the guy who was selling him wasn't that clear. He didn't repeat himself. He didn't follow up. He didn't check on things. So Brian created his own frame. So he heard what he was going to hear. Our borrowers are doing the same thing right now. Okay, our clients are looking at the media and saying, this is a bad time to buy. The market's going to crash, because the media will create frames, okay, for them, and they will create their own frames. You tell them the rate is 6.25%. They're going to say that that's high because you didn't frame things correctly, right? You didn't take the time to predict predict what they're probably going to feel or say, and then you didn't take the time. These are the 3 Ps by Renee Rodriguez, by the way. Number 1 is predict. We all can predict what someone is going to feel based on what's going on. Kairos, I believe, is the name of it. Timeliness, okay, in the world, in the market. All right. So you can predict already in advance. So we already have a leg up. Then we can create the frame by preempting, addressing that before they bring it up, because we know that they might be already be thinking it. And then we can prevent. Those are the 3 Ps. Okay. Predict, preempt, prevent. We can prevent them from creating a frame that's not true, or prevent them from making a bad decision. Okay. So we have to make sure. That's what I heard when you said that stuff. I was like, dude, this is spot on. We need to be doing this more with our people. We need to make sure we're framing everything correctly for the agents we're talking to, as well as the consumers. So you got in, you started killing it. You followed a greatness tracker, you hired a coach, and then you started building a team, right? So you were just a single loan officer, and then you started building a team around you, a support staff to help you. What are some of the struggles in building a team? Because you've moved from single psychotic, literally a single male, but single psychotic loan officer, right? Into now you have how many employees that report to you approximately, sales and ops?
We have over 80 employees. Yeah, 9 on my team.
So what was that like?
It was a disaster. I mean, that's what it's like. It was a disaster. So I was instructed to build a team, go hire somebody. So I was instructed to hire an assistant, which I couldn't afford. Then 2 weeks later, I was instructed to hire a second dedicated instructor, which again, I couldn't afford. And so not only that, I didn't know how to lead. I didn't know how to manage. I didn't know how to motivate. I mean, I knew how to do all of those things for myself, kind of, but certainly wasn't prepared to be like a new parent, right? Like with new children that I was supposed to show how to do the business, hold them accountable, tell them what to do. I literally was lost. And again, luckily, over time, again, use the word slowly. I slowly was given direction on how and what to give them, to delegate to them, to how to motivate them, how to lead them, how to manage them. It took years, but literally I still think to this day, I still think I'm probably a 4 out of 10 as it relates to like becoming the best leader that I can become, becoming the best parent that I could come and become in an organization. So there's so much growth left to do. But yeah, early on, it was like, if you think a 4 is bad, like try like a -40 is who I was in the beginning.
Yeah, no, I feel you, man. And I think that as you grow and you get better and better, at the beginning, you start rating yourself a lot higher, because we do a lot of self-evaluations. I do too, right? And then what I noticed though is that the years went by, I started rating myself lower, not because I thought I was worse. And I want you guys all to take this away, okay? Because Brian just said it, he used different words, but I started rating myself lower too, just like he rated himself a 4. And by the way, he's the best, right? He's literally one of the best. He's rating himself a 4. I'm the same way. I look at like all these different areas of my life. I rate them every single year, and I'm probably 5s in almost all of them. A couple 3s. I got 1 6 on there, and it's not because I'm the best I've ever been too, but it's because you realize how much you can actually do. So I think that that's really important for all of you guys to know, is that you're never as good as your best day, and you're never as bad as your worst day. Okay, you're never, ever, ever as great as you think. I'm not either. And we're never as bad as we think we are when something goes wrong or something goes as planned. So making sure that we always have that mindset, I think, is super, super, super important. So I would like to get into some like tactics and database stuff.
Yeah.
And because I could talk to you for 5 hours. I feel like I'm on an Ed Milet podcast right now. So you are the king of database. And when I say database, yes, that includes past clients, and referrals, but specifically, I think a portion of the database that gets neglected so much, and I go hot and cold on this, just so everyone on here is very clear. I get really, really good when I focus on it, and then I drift. He used that word earlier, I drift, and then I'm not good at it, but it's current clients, people that are pre-qualified, people that are pre-approved, that haven't bought yet, and people that are in the process of getting a loan with you, in contract or a refinance. Like, how do you generate so many referrals? like from those people? What are some tactics that we could like lead
Yeah.
these people with on how you do that?
Absolutely. Let's get into that. First of, I want to go back really quick, guys. One thing that I would tell myself and most others without hyper direction is like, you can never hire or lead somebody until you're willing to do the work like mad, like 10 times more than you can ever expect anybody else to do it.
I love it.
So for those of you who are out there, like, I'm going to go hire somebody to make all my calls and set my appointments, or I'm going to
Nope.
hire assistants to do all this stuff. Like you can't do that until you're willing to do it all and figure it all out and know how to close and do it all yourself, because it will always crash and burn and they will never respect you. So you've got to be the money maker, the touchdown maker, like all that stuff before you can ever hire. And I think a lot of people that I've hired are, you know, their first step is like, I'm going to hire somebody and they're going to do it all. So just want to be clear, don't do that. Like you have to be crazy, like Jeremy, you have to be crazy, and not literally crazy, but you have to be able to have the courage and you have to be able to have the discipline to do it yourself first so that you
Yep.
can teach somebody else how to do it for you. But tactics on database, Jeremy, so a core coach, one of my previous coaches literally had a sidebar conversation with me at an event. And he's like, you know, I was thinking about it. He said, what if we never had to prospect a real estate agent again? What if we never had to rely on a real estate agent again for business, right? What if that was a real thing? And part of me was like, you're out of your mind, right? But then I started thinking about that in the days, weeks, and months that follow. And he said, what if you could generate all the business that you currently have just from the people that you already know? What if you could generate all the business you have from the clients that you've already served? Wouldn't it be more fun? Wouldn't it be more profitable? Wouldn't it be just a completely different business, right? Than having to constantly get fired and go chase new ones and replace.
Yep.
So I don't think it's really possible, frankly, to completely get rid of having great real estate partners. However, it would be amazing. So I took that and I started thinking about ways that I could pour into my database, leverage my database, provide even more value to my database, to generate referrals from the database. And so for all of you guys out there, I mean, just a simple tactic is take your phone and go to the contacts, like press your contacts, scroll all the way down to the contacts and see how many that you have. So for me, I have something like 5,000 contacts right now. And it's probably, you know, get rid of 30% of those contacts, Jeremy. So 30%, you know, I'll probably have what? So 30 out of 5,000, so 1,500. So I probably have 3,500 people that I actually know in there. Like I probably say people's numbers that I don't know anymore, or crazy exes, or people that, you know, hate me.
Limo drivers, like whatever
It is,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So but literally I have 3,500 people that in some way, shape, or form, you know, we've connected. And I think the worst of the people on this call probably have 500 contacts. And so get rid of 20-30%, but you have like 300 contacts minimum that you can start an amazing leveraged database type of career. And just asking, I think, is the first tactic, letting people know who you are, what you do, and that you need help, right? And so just starting there. But Jeremy, one of the things I've kind of figured out, and we'll get into some current client referral stuff, but like, Jeremy, how many financial advisors would you say you know?
5.
Cool. How many divorce attorneys do you know? Hopefully not many, but how many family attorneys?
2 off the top of my
Cool.
head.
CPAs?
10.
Estate attorneys?
Yeah, another half dozen.
Cool. How about real estate agents?
Hundreds.
Cool. Hundreds. So Jeremy just probably told me at least he knows 100 people that could potentially help me, at least between all the things that I just asked them. And then if I narrowed it down, Jeremy, out of scale of 1 to 10, you know, how many of each of those, like, do you rate at a 9 or a 10? What percentage?
30%.
Perfect. So 30%. So at the very minimum, Jeremy probably knows, I don't know, let's just say 10. Jeremy knows 10 people that if I ask him, Jeremy, listen, I'm looking to add people like this in my sphere of influence. Like I either want to be able to refer better to better referral part VIPs. I want to have better financial advisors that'll take better care of my clients, or just in case I ever need a divorce attorney, or just in case I ever need a realtor. Like, would you mind making an introduction to me? Like, would you be so kind to making a personal introduction to those 10 for me? And I'd love to meet with them, get to know them, maybe have you come with me and we can do a lunch together. Would that be possible? Could you do that for me?
And so you know that my answer would always be yes, because we're in a relationship. So I want to make sure that you guys didn't miss that, because he's just so smooth and he does it naturally. Is that what he said there, and what he did was that if you have 10 really solid relationships with people, right, and you ask them for help in an introduction to 10, notice that he didn't ask for one. And this is where I just, man, Brian is just stronger than I am at this. And this was one of my biggest takeaways when I took his current client referral class, is that he's almost like the timeshare model. He'll ask for 10 names and numbers, like, and he coaches his team to ask for multiple names and numbers, where I'm like, hey, if you could introduce me to a friend, I'm asking for one, but he's asking for a lot, right? Which is why he gets a lot. So I love that. So that's a great point. Now, what do you do with your database though on a regular basis that is
Yeah.
generating good results, both for your past client database, sphere of influence, as well as current clients? I'd like to separate them.
Okay, cool. So I want everybody to know out there that's listening, you guys, if you're in the mortgage business, you are a by referral sales organization. That's who you are. That's what you do. So that's what you need to create, right? That's what you are. Unless you're buying leads, like Jeremy said, and that sucks. So number one, you have to know who you are. You're a by referral sales organization. So we'll start with past clients, Jeremy. So a lot of times when I call past clients, I'll call 100 and maybe 2 have a mortgage need right now, right? But I
Yeah.
always ask them and let them know like what I want and what I'm looking for, right? So I will start off by like letting them know, first of all, if they did a refinance for you, they might not know you do purchases. If you did a purchase for them, they might not know you do refinances. No, it sounds crazy, but
No,
happens
it's
all the
true.
time.
You guys don't miss that. I get it all the time still. I'll have someone call me and say, hey, so do you do purchase loans? I'm like, what? So remember, I talked about framing before. We need to create the frame for people of what we do. So
Yeah,
continue on.
so planting seeds so that you can pick crops. So if you're not letting people know what kind of mortgages you do, all your past clients, you've got to start there. Let them know that you do purchases and refinances. Let them know, as crazy as it sounds, you do investment properties, second homes. Literally say, we do Airbnb lending, because they
Right.
might not know the difference, but you've got to like color it up for them. So let them know all the types of purchases that you do. Let them know that you do refinances. Yes, you do cash out refinances. You do debt consolidation refinances. You do rate and term refinances. You do, we can help you get into a better refinance product to help your, for your financial future. So you've got to color it up. So first and foremost, you've got to color it up and let them know what you do. So if you have 100 past clients and they don't know that you do these different types of mortgages, you might get 10 more loans a year just by letting them know what you do, and their ignorance, they didn't know that. So you just have to color it up for them, plant the seed so that you can pick the crop.
Yeah, exactly. So when you tell someone like, which is why in my annual review, for example, one of the questions I always ask every single time for past clients is, are you currently carrying any unwanted debt? Right.
Perfect.
And because guess what? A lot of people are all the time. And they might not be nearly as rate sensitive depending on how high the debt is and how high the monthly payments are, right? So I think asking those type of questions and then using like a mortgage coach, show them the consolidating the debt, how much money they're going to save by paying off the credit, etc. It's a really, really easy tool that we all have at our fingertips. I do it all the time, and you would be shocked. I have someone right now that's trading a 2.9, or excuse me, a 3.25% interest rate on a 30-year fixed for a 5.75% interest rate. Why would they do that, Jeremy? Well, they are completely want to redo their house. They want to put in a pool. They want to do all this stuff, and they don't want an adjustable home equity line of credit. So when I showed them what the payments would increase to on a fixed rate second, right? They were like, I told them, I showed them in the mortgage coach. I'm happy to share the link if you guys want. I literally showed them that, hey, here's the thing that you're missing, right? Is that your payment is going to be $900 more a month than it is right now. If you do this giant second, right? It's going to be $900 more a month than if you just refinanced and took the cash out. Now, it took me 3 conversations, because sometimes people just, they're like, the number, they're so focused on the rate, right? But it took me 3 different conversations with the person, but finally she was like, okay, I totally get it. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty black and white. Like, your payments on this fixed rate second is $2,000 a month. You add that to what your current payment is on your first, you show them in the mortgage coach, right? You add that to what your payment is on the first. That is $800 more than what you would pay if you just took all the cash out, right? Like in a cash out refinance. So we have to be an advisor. We have to ask the right questions. The only way to do that is to stay in touch with people and ask those type of questions. So let's talk about CCRs though. So
Okay.
CCRs, you're the king of them. So remember, the definition of CCRs to anyone listening here is someone that hasn't closed yet is really that's the easiest definition.
Yeah.
Someone that hasn't closed yet. So how many CCRs are you generating just on average on a monthly basis, and how are you doing it?
50 a month, 600 a year. And I know that we have limited time, so, and I'll give you as much time as I need, but, or you need, but, so it's, I was assigned a competition. It's so funny how so many different things in our career come from like challenges or competitions or whatever. It wasn't derived by me. So I kind of figured it out from there, but I would have lost $10,000 if I would have lost this bet, this competition on two other students getting the most CCRs. So I was like, man, I can't afford 10 grand. Definitely going to figure this out. So what I realized was I don't have a problem asking for referrals. So the first step, obviously, if you guys aren't asking for referrals every single time before you get off the call, you've got to ask for a referral. Your team has to ask for a referral. You just have to do it because you don't know who they may have run into yesterday, even if you asked them a week ago. So number one, ask. Number two, the way we ask. So I realized like every single time for 7 years, I was saying, Jeremy, do you know anyone who might need a mortgage just like you? Or is there anyone you know, right? Those were the two ways that I was asking. And I would get a whopping 2 to 5 current client referrals a month. And what I realized was I wasn't really getting them. Like it wasn't coming from that question. They were really passively giving me referrals, right? Like they had a friend that they bumped into and they liked me, so they referred us, but it wasn't because of my question over the phone. That's the truth. So it's not that magic. But what I realized was, Jeremy, is everybody that we worked with, whether they were purchasing a home or they already owned a home, they're purchasing a second home, like they all knew people just like them. So we started framing it differently and we started keeping track. Like, Jeremy, how many homeowners do you know? And I
I love
started
it.
just
You guys write that down. This is how you ask for massive amount of referrals. When you're talking to your clients, it's, hey, how are things going? They're going great. Awesome. Hey, I have a question for you, Brian. How many homeowners do you know? Or how many friends do you know that own a home? Another way to ask that question would be, hey, how many friends do you have that currently rent? Right? You can just change one word and you're opening up to a very specific, which is what I'm getting from you right now. It's a very sniper specific ask.
Yep.
Cool.
100%. And I'm leaning, we're just so busy with our cell phones and everything. Like, guys, like you might ask me who owns a boat, and I probably know 10 people, but the first thing out of my mouth would be like, I can't think right now, but as soon as I can think, I'll let you know. Well, they never think when they get off the phone to let you know. So you got to get it from them. So yes, Jeremy. So then I would say, what are the first 5 names that come to mind? The people that your most favorite people in the world, your friends and family, your neighbors, the people that you work with. What are the first 5 people that came to mind that are homeowners?
I love it. And I could think of 5 right off the top of my head. Yeah.
And then I would get more, right? You'd give me 5, the first 5, and I'd be like, Jeremy, did that include the neighbors by chance?
Dude,
And then you might
savage.
give me a couple more, right? And then I would say, hey, does that include any coworkers that you currently work with? What about any aunts or uncles that live in this state or any other state? Like, and so I would just literally ask a couple more questions and I always get more names. So on average, we get about 10 names, right? So if I get 50 leads a month, I get more than that. But if I get 50 leads a month and I get 10 names, that's 500 names just from 50 leads, right? And that didn't even include renters. So Jeremy, out of curiosity, how many renters do you know? Maybe people
Yeah,
you work with.
I know a ton of people.
Cool. What are the first 5? And he would probably give me 2 to 5, depending, and I would be able to get him up to 5 by saying, does that include people you work with? What about family members? What about best friends, people you went to college with, et cetera, right? So just a couple more questions can get me a couple more names. And so what we do is we get all the names of people from Jeremy that own a home or are renting. And we basically then let Jeremy know, like, we'd love to see if they may have a mortgage need in the next 3 months, 6 months, a year, or 5 years. Okay. And so, Jeremy, would it be okay if I followed up with you on these names, both in an email and then periodically as we talk, I'm going to see if you've had an opportunity to talk with them to see if they have any type of mortgage need now or in the future in this city, in this state, or any other state.
So look at the steps are really simple. I want to unpackage it, you guys. So step one is you have to ask. Okay. Step two is be specific in your ask. Step three is that when you are specific in your ask, you're asking for more than one, right? Step four is always ask an additional question, which I'm not doing and I wrote down. Always ask an additional question. And just so you know, I feel uncomfortable right now, even thinking about doing this. So I'm sure all of you watching, you might be too. It's okay, right? It's okay because you're a good person. You want to help people. And we have to remember that's the whole purpose of us asking. We're not like talking to a pissed off borrower and saying, they just ripped us. And then Brian's going, yeah, no, I know it was a horrible experience. I own it 100%. So how many people do you know that rent? He's not doing that. Okay. He's not doing that. So let's be clear on that. It's like a good experience talk, but look at his results. 600 leads over the last 12 months that are referrals from people that he hasn't even closed yet. So success leaves clues. Tim Brahim said that 15, I don't even know how many years ago. I'll never forget it. Or Greg Frost, someone said it. But success leaves clues. Let's pay attention to these clues. This is someone who's absolutely crushing it with people that, I mean, I only have 62 leads this month total. This guy's getting 50 leads a month, like from people that haven't even closed with him yet. So, Brian, I super appreciate you being on today. I looked at this interview, by the way, and for all of you watching it, as I wanted to introduce Brian to this community. This is not going to be the last time we have him on, but this was a great origin story, get to know you. You left us with some great stuff. I took notes all about mindset, having, less fear, getting into action, being patient with the macro, but super crazy with the micro, specifically asking follow-up questions always, and don't be afraid big takeaway, by the way, for all of you guys here. I wrote this down because I'm gonna share it with my team. I run into this all the time with loan officers that work with me, is you have to be a master of your craft before you can teach someone else or hire someone else to do it. I think that's a huge, huge, huge takeaway. I see people make this mistake all the time with mortgage coach specifically. They're like, I'm gonna hire someone to do all my mortgage coaches. And I'm like, well, how are they gonna learn how to do it? And if you rely on someone else to teach them how to do it, how do you know that they're going to do it the way you want them to do it? Right? They're just going to do it their way. And then you're going to be frustrated. And then you're going to say, this sucks. And they're going to go, well, you don't know what you're talking about. You haven't done one before. So get into the mortgage coach, play around with the total cost analysis. Brian, thanks for being on. Any closing words to anyone?
Yeah, guys, I would say mindset's everything right now. First and foremost, thank you before I forget, dude. I'm just
My
honored.
pleasure.
Jeremy could have asked a million people because he knows all the producers in the industry. So thank you so much, dude. I'm like humbled, crazy that you would even bring me on. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. But closing words, guys, like it's mindset. So the first word that you guys all think of when we say interest rates right now, like what's the first word that most of you are thinking right now? And
Hi.
when I do this exercise, hi, right? So guys, we just need to reframe like tool, like the word that we need to think of is tool, like market right now. If I use that word, what's the first word that when I say, real estate market, most people are going to say crazy, right? For me, it's opportunity, right? When we say, making phone calls, what's the first word? Like some people, it's fear-based, right? I'm like, it's got to be more, right? So everything we do, guys, is just waking up every day. Here's what I want to leave you with. Like you can literally let the media, you can let your peers, you can let your results, you can let them like derail you and like really get in your head. But the first thing you got to do every morning is you just have to wake up and have a gratitude journal. You have to, those keywords that you need to accomplish, whatever you're struggling with that day that you need to get done. Don't start your day until your word is right, until your word is opportunistic, positive, motivating, not defeating the first thing you start. So if you start your day with defeating words in your head, you're not going to have success. So that's the first thing that I would start with. In this market, guys, there's opportunity. It's super fun. This is when you guys are going to have way more market share in about, 6 months than you ever dreamed imaginable. So just stick with it, stay positive, you got to get after it every single day, make your phone calls, be purposeful, have intention, keep relying on guys like Jeremy and Mortgage Coach. Those are the tools that you need to succeed. And that's what I'll leave you with. So thank you
I
so
love
much.
it. Well, thanks a million, Brian. You're a great friend. I appreciate you taking the time, and I will leave you all with this too. Brian said it earlier, it takes a lot of no's to get to a yes. read a Jeffrey Gitomer book years ago. It never left me. It takes 7 no's to get to 1 yes, statistically speaking. And I used it in real life. So I'm going to leave you with this. This is just from last week. Okay. A realtor, whale realtor, big realtor I've been following up with, doesn't return calls, says, oh yeah, we'll get together, blows me off constantly. Somehow I got added to their market newsletter or whatever, like they added me. And so I got the little automated newsletter, and here was my response. When's a good time to connect? I'm at 7 asks, and I know in sales it takes 10 to get a yes, so I'm getting close. Have a great day. So have some fun with it, okay? Have a fun time, get your mind straight. You all have a great day and go crush it.
Thanks, Jeremy. Thanks, guys.